Wait a second. How did the bold and the beautiful get here? A young Spencer apparently spiraling into another round of chaos, a Forrester daughter pushed so far she may completely snap, a marriage suddenly under siege by grief, old family war lines hardening again, and hanging over all of it is the kind of question that makes longtime viewers lean closer to the screen instead of backing away. Is this just another week of soap drama, or are we watching a deeper collapse inside one of this show's most powerful families? Because when the early spoilers point to violence, emotional breakdowns, scheming behind the scenes, and a mother-in-law nightmare that refuses to die, the story stops feeling like a simple preview and starts feeling like something much stranger. I'm Anderson, and this is Soap Pulse. If you enjoy deep dive soap storytelling like this, like, share, and subscribe, because this week's fallout gets more intense the deeper you look at it. What makes this particular stretch of story so fascinating is not just that it promises conflict. The bold and the beautiful has always promised conflict. That's baked into the DNA of the show. What makes this different is the concentration of emotional damage all landing at once, and the way several seemingly separate storylines appear to be feeding the same larger tension. On one side, you have Will Spencer, a character whose behavior has become so erratic and so aggressive that viewers are now openly asking whether the show is pushing him into territory that no longer feels romantic, misunderstood, or even plausibly impulsive. On another side, you have Steffy Forrester, who has spent years holding her family together through sheer force of will, now facing what early spoilers suggest could be a breaking point on multiple fronts at the same time. And then, in the middle of it all, you have the Forresters, the Logans, the Spencers, and the orbiting players around them all acting like they're still fighting isolated battles, when in reality, these conflicts are starting to merge into one giant powder keg. That is why viewers should care. This isn't just about who dates whom or who launches which fashion line. This is about power, identity, legacy, and emotional control. The Forresters are once again battling to protect their house, their image, and their future. The Spencers are once again carrying the reputation of a family that believes it can bulldoze through consequences. And the younger generation, instead of cooling things down, seems to be accelerating the instability. If you've been watching this show long enough, you know that the most dangerous periods are not the ones where everybody is openly at war. The truly explosive periods are the ones where denial is still in effect, when people are pretending there's still time to manage things quietly. That is exactly what this upcoming stretch feels like. To understand why the week ahead looks so combustible, we have to back up slightly and examine the emotional dominoes already falling into place. One of the most devastating developments involves Daphne and Carter. According to the spoiler information circulating, Daphne receives catastrophic medical news. She cannot have biological children because she is in early menopause. That revelation alone would be enough to anchor an entire emotional arc. For a couple that had reportedly been excited to start a family immediately, and not just any family, but a big one, this isn't a disappointment. It's a sudden collapse of a future they had already begun picturing in their minds. And that matters because in soap storytelling, family plans are never just family plans. They are symbols. Children represent legacy, healing, permanence, proof that love can outlast chaos. So when that possibility is ripped away, it doesn't just test a marriage, it tests what that marriage thought it was building toward. Steffy stepping in to support Daphne is important, and not only because it shows Steffy in a compassionate light. It also places Steffy in yet another position where she is absorbing other people's pain while her own life is becoming more unstable by the hour. That is a detail worth paying attention to. Strong characters in soap operas rarely collapse when one problem arrives. They collapse when they become the emotional shock absorber for everybody else, all while their own boundaries are being invaded. If Steffy is comforting Daphne, dealing with Finn, preparing for major family moves, and bracing for another Sheila conflict, then what we may be seeing is not a random meltdown, but the very believable result of a woman reaching overload. And then there is Dylan. Dylan's role in this entire saga may look secondary at first glance, but it may be far more disruptive than it appears. The beach house interaction with Will reportedly becomes flirtier, bolder, and for some viewers, so abrupt that they've even wondered whether part of it could be through a fantasy lens. That kind of fan reaction tells you something immediately. It tells you the energy of these scenes feels heightened, maybe even unreal, because Dylan is not merely expressing interest. She is pushing, she is testing, she is positioning herself as the alternative to Electra, and she seems to be doing it at the exact moment Will is at his weakest, most rejected, and most volatile. That is not accidental. In stories like this, timing is character revelation. Dylan moving in when Will is spiraling tells us either that she sees an opportunity, that she genuinely believes she can comfort him, or that she does not fully understand the danger of getting close to someone in this state. Maybe it's all three. The detail about her discussing living arrangements and making it clear she would not be coming back to live above the garage if she returned to his orbit is especially telling. That isn't just flirtation, that's negotiation. That's someone thinking ahead, someone imagining where she fits in the hierarchy if she gets what she wants. And if Electra finds out Dylan is making that play, which spoilers suggest she does, then we are no longer talking about a quiet rebound. We are talking about another social explosion inside an already unstable environment. But the center of this storm is still Will. The most disturbing thread in the spoiler package is the suggestion that Will's violent behavior may not only continue, but get worse. Now, it is important to separate what appears to be circulating broadly from what is described as unconfirmed. There is chatter, reportedly from a reputable source, that something happens involving Eric and that Will's aggression escalates in a shocking way. Even those sharing the spoiler information seem skeptical of the most extreme version of that rumor, and honestly, that skepticism is justified. If the scenario is exactly as dramatic as some fear, many viewers would likely see it as a major tonal overreach. But even if the reality is more complicated, even if it turns out to be a shove, a struggle, an accidental fall, or a moment where Eric intervenes and things go badly, the key issue remains the same. Will is now being positioned around physical danger, not just emotional obsession, and that raises the biggest question around his entire arc. What is the show actually trying to say about him? Is Will a wounded young man being judged too quickly, as he himself appears to argue? Is he someone who has been enabled by Bill's worldview and now mistakes desire for entitlement? Is he becoming a cautionary figure, a portrait of emotional immaturity turning toxic? Or is the writing itself trapped in a contradiction, still wanting viewers to see Will as sympathetic while simultaneously having him behave in ways that feel increasingly indefensible? That contradiction may be why this story is hitting such a nerve. Because, look at the details, Will complains that people judge him before he even speaks. He seems resentful of living under Bill Spencer's shadow, which is understandable on some level. A son wanting to be seen as himself rather than as an extension of his father is a classic and often compelling tension. But then we're told he's distraught over Electra, thinks he can't live without her, desperately tries to get her back, appears unable to accept her refusal, and may be involved in yet another violent incident tied to the Forrester world. At some point, the audience starts asking whether this is heartbreak or coercion with prettier music playing underneath it. That's a serious distinction, and viewers are noticing it. The Electra piece matters because she has increasingly become the battlefield rather than merely a participant. She is the object of Will's fixation, the focus of RJ's protective interest, the trigger for Dylan's opportunism, and a symbolic line in the sand between the Spencers and the Forresters. Early spoilers suggest Will goes to the Forrester estate, trying desperately to win her back, only to meet resistance. That alone already sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. He is walking straight into hostile territory toward a woman who reportedly intends to stand firm, while RJ has already been urging her to stay away from him. Add Eric's protective instincts to that mix, and the emotional geometry becomes obvious. This is not a reconciliation setup. This is an escalation setup. And Eric being the one to confront Will is especially significant because Eric represents more than one angry relative. He represents the old guard, the patriarchal authority of the Forrester family, the public face of elegance and legacy. When Eric tells someone to get out and stay away from the family, that order carries symbolic weight. It is the house speaking. It is tradition speaking. It is also a challenge because somebody like Will, already full of self-pity and humiliation, is precisely the kind of person who may react badly when publicly diminished by a powerful elder. So whether the rumor about a physical altercation plays out literally or in softened form, the emotional logic behind the spoiler is easy to see. Eric throws the boundary down, Will refuses to absorb it peacefully, and if that line gets crossed, the consequences won't stay private for long. Meanwhile, another fault line is opening that may be even more emotionally loaded. Finn and Sheila. Every time this story resurfaces, it reopens one of the show's deepest wells of unresolved dread. Finn reportedly tells Steffy that Sheila came to see him, and then, in what may be the most provocative emotional trigger of the entire week, suggests that maybe it is time to let Sheila into their lives. Just pause on that for a moment. After everything Steffy has been through, after every reason she has to treat Sheila as a threat rather than a misunderstood relative, Finn is still standing there asking for some version of access, some version of reconsideration, some version of grace. Now, supporters of Finn's position could argue that he sees something changed in Sheila. They could argue that blood ties are emotionally complicated, that rejection sometimes fuels obsession, and that careful inclusion may seem less dangerous than endless war. But critics of Finn's stance would say this is the same cycle repeating itself yet again. Steffy is asked to manage her trauma so Finn can honor his emotional conflict. She is asked to be practical about a woman who has repeatedly made practical caution impossible. And if Steffy reacts with fury, which spoilers strongly suggest she does, is that really a meltdown? Or is it the only sane response left to someone who feels like her husband still does not understand the scale of the threat? That is where the psychology of Steffy becomes the heart of this story. Because the word meltdown can be misleading, it suggests irrationality, a sudden loss of composure out of nowhere. But when you stack the actual pressures around her, the picture looks different. She is supporting friends through devastating personal news. She is entangled in a family war involving Logan versus Forrester visibility and business power. She is dealing with Ridge and Eric's plans to put the spotlight back on Forrester creations. She may be preparing for a high-profile trip with huge emotional stakes, and at home, the Sheila issue is once again crawling through the walls. If Steffy snaps, the real story may not be that she snapped. The real story may be that she held it together as long as she did. The business side of the story adds another layer of intrigue because it brings public image into collision with private collapse. Eric and Ridge discussing the launch of Eric's couture line as a way to put the spotlight back on Forrester creations and away from Logan is more than a fashion decision. It is strategic warfare, it is reputation management, it is an attempt to seize narrative control, and once Katie is said to be hard at work at Logan with hints that she may be scheming or at least operating with sharp intent, the corporate battle begins to feel like a media battle too. Who gets the headlines? Who controls attention? Who owns the moment? In a universe where public perception matters almost as much as personal vengeance, those questions are never separate from the emotional story. There is even speculation that somebody could try to distract from a major Forrester event or undercut its attention. That matters because if launches and public moments become targets, then what we're watching is no longer a passive rivalry. It becomes orchestration, it becomes sabotage by timing, it becomes a study in how these families weaponize spectacle itself. And that is one reason the upcoming trip looms so large. A glamorous destination setting, major family players traveling together, tensions already peaking, and Sheila potentially following into that orbit? That is not just a change of scenery, that is a pressure chamber with expensive lighting. Then we get to the RJ factor, and this is where the story becomes even stranger. Early spoilers suggest RJ gets closer to Electra at work after Will is out of the way. That sounds simple on the surface, maybe even inevitable, but emotionally it complicates everything. If RJ is genuinely trying to protect Electra, his closeness could be framed as support. But if there is even a trace of satisfaction in having Will removed and now having access to Electra, then viewers are going to read that differently. That's not pure protection, that's strategic proximity. And if Will sees that, if Dylan sees that, if Electra starts feeling trapped between men who all claim to know what is best for her, then the triangle stops being romantic and starts looking territorial. This is why the possible incident at Bikini Bar feels so ominous. By midweek, according to the spoiler clues, Electra appears upset and crouched down checking on someone. That image alone is loaded. It implies aftermath. It implies damage already done. It implies that another confrontation may have crossed a physical line. And if the reports are correct that this ties back to another clash between Will and RJ, then the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Whatever is driving Will, whether heartbreak, entitlement, humiliation, or some unstable mix of all three, he is becoming combustible in public spaces around the exact people he cannot emotionally detach from. What makes this especially uncomfortable is that the show seems to be inviting viewers to debate causation. Was Will provoked? Did RJ bait him? Did family interference make things worse? Those are valid questions in any conflict, but there is a point where repeated escalation becomes its own answer. A person can be provoked and still responsible. A rival can be obnoxious and still not deserving of violence. A breakup can be painful and still not justify emotional siege tactics. So if the story wants audiences to keep one foot inside Will's pain, it will have to do a very delicate balancing act, because the audience tolerance for troubled guy pushed too far narratives has changed. People hear those stories differently now than they once did. And then there's the hauntingly practical question nobody in this world seems willing to ask directly. Why are so many people acting as if Will's obsession is a love story waiting to be repaired instead of a problem that may require distance, accountability, and serious intervention? When a man keeps showing up, keeps pressing, keeps escalating, and keeps centering his own suffering over everyone else's safety, what exactly are those around him hoping will happen? That one more conversation will fix it? That one more rejection will somehow calm him down? That Bill telling him he did nothing wrong will make the situation better? It won't. In fact, that may be one of the most revealing and unsettling dynamics in the entire story, because Bill Spencer's influence is all over this, even when he is off to the side. Will griping about being judged under the Spencer name is one thing, but Bill's reported reassurance that Will did nothing wrong and may need to move on to someone else who won't be so ridiculous carries a dangerous undertone. It reinforces grievance instead of self-examination. It translates rejection into insult. It turns accountability into wounded pride. And when a young man already feels cornered and humiliated, that is exactly the kind of paternal framing that can make him feel justified instead of corrected. So the deeper story may not simply be that Will is spiraling. It may be that Will was never taught how not to spiral. At the same time, some of the week's other developments quietly mirror this theme of wanting outcomes that reality won't simply hand over. Carter and Daphne want the family they imagined, but biology has suddenly interrupted that dream. Finn wants a peaceful bridge between his wife and Sheila, but history refuses to disappear. Ridge and Eric want to reclaim the spotlight, but public attention is never fully controllable. Dylan may want Will, but wanting someone at the moment they are most broken can come with consequences she may not be ready for. Katie may want strategic leverage. RJ may want Electra close. Electra may want clarity. Steffy may want safety. Everybody wants something. The problem is that this upcoming stretch looks built around one brutal truth. Wanting something does not mean you can force the world to give it to you. That is why the looming travel storyline carries so much suspense. Brooke returning and joining Steffy, Ridge, and Eric in making plans for the trip raises the stakes because movement changes alignment. New location, new opportunities, new dangers. If a couture launch is tied to that glamorous backdrop, the family will be walking into a place designed for spectacle just as their emotional foundations are cracking. And if Sheila follows because of Steffy's rejection of Finn's request, then the sands quite literally become a battleground. Spoilers hint at a showdown on the beach with Steffy ranting at Sheila, and depending on how the scenes are written, that could either be framed as explosive spectacle or as the eruption of long-suppressed terror and disgust. And here is the thing longtime viewers understand instinctively. Beach showdowns, church scenes, luxury travel, emotionally charged family confrontations, these are not random ingredients. These are classic signs the show is building toward events that are meant to change everything, or at least feel like they might. Whether that change is romantic, violent, psychological, or reputational remains the mystery. But the spoilers are clearly pushing the idea that whatever begins in this early stretch will not stay contained there. It will travel, it will spread, it will alter relationships beyond the immediate incidents. Even Taylor and Deacon moving forward, and Taylor being stunned by Finn's request regarding Sheila, contributes to that widening effect. When secondary or adjacent players start reacting to the same central shockwave, you know the storyline is radiating outward. Taylor hearing about Finn's position is not a small detail. Taylor understands Steffy's history, Steffy's instincts, and the cost of asking her to bend where Sheila is concerned. If Taylor is stunned, that gives viewers permission to see Finn's request as more than merely hopeful. It becomes shocking even inside the show's own emotional logic. That, in turn, isolates Finn further. He may think he is asking for healing. Everyone around Steffy may hear him asking for vulnerability in the face of a known threat. Then there's the curious emotional contrast between devastation and opportunism. While Daphne and Carter reel from heartbreaking news, while Steffy and Finn wrestle with a marriage-level disagreement, Dylan is making her move, Katie may be scheming, Ridge is plotting strategy, and Will is reportedly still refusing to back down. That tonal collision is where the documentary feel of this story really emerges. In real scandals, in real family implosions, life never pauses respectfully for one disaster at a time. Pain and ambition overlap, grief and vanity overlap, public image management and private collapse overlap. One person is crying while another is plotting. One person is trying to rebuild while another is trying to capitalize. And that is exactly what makes this week's spoilers feel less like a neat recap and more like a social ecosystem under stress. Fan reaction has already reflected that tension. Some viewers are reportedly incredulous over the extent of Will's behavior, openly questioning whether the writing has become absurd. Others seem more willing to believe the story is trying to construct him as tragic rather than monstrous. Some are focused on the chemistry games around Electra, Dylan, and RJ. Others are far more invested in the Steffy-Finn-Sheila axis because they see that as the emotional spine of the show. Still others are watching the fashion war, the family branding battle, and the possibility of a splashy overseas showcase. When a soap gets this many active debate threads at once, one of two things is happening. Either the show is brilliantly juggling multiple forms of suspense, or it is on the verge of losing tonal discipline. That uncertainty is part of the attraction, and maybe that is the biggest revelation hidden inside these spoilers. The real controversy may not be any one action, any one punch, any one argument, or any one meltdown. The real controversy may be that The Bold and the Beautiful is once again testing how much instability an audience will accept before it stops reading chaos as drama and starts reading it as a breakdown in the social order of the show itself. Can Will still be redeemed if the violence worsens? Can Finn remain sympathetic if he keeps misjudging Sheila? Can Steffy stay composed when everyone around her keeps asking her to absorb the unabsorbable? Can Electra keep her autonomy when every man around her seems to turn her choices into a referendum on his own pain? Can the Forresters protect the brand while the family behind it looks more fractured than ever? By the time we reach the emotional turning point of this week, that may be the image viewers are left with most strongly, not just one scandal, but a web of people all pushing their private agendas until the walls begin to shake. Will at home looking upset after whatever happens is, in its own way, a chilling image because it suggests consequences have finally landed but not necessarily clarity. Dylan wanting to scoop him up only deepens the sense that unresolved people are about to make even more unresolved decisions. Electra losing it when she finds out adds another fuse. Steffy raging at the idea of Sheila being welcomed in reopens the oldest wound in the room. Daphne and Carter's sorrow reminds us that not all pain in this story comes from villains or rivals. Some of it comes from life itself, and sometimes that kind of pain can be just as destabilizing. So, what is really going on here? Maybe the simplest answer is the most unsettling one. This isn't just a week of spoilers about romance, jealousy, and family feuds. It's a week about boundaries failing, emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, marital boundaries, family boundaries, professional boundaries. Everybody wants access to something or someone that is no longer freely available to them, and instead of stepping back, they push harder. That is why the whole thing feels so dangerous. Once a story becomes about people refusing limits, every encounter carries risk, and that's what makes this upcoming stretch so compelling for viewers who love scandal, emotional fallout, and high-curiosity storytelling. Beneath the glamour, beneath the flirtation, beneath the couture launches and luxury travel, there's a deeper question pulsing through every spoiler. When a family system stops rewarding restraint and starts rewarding pressure, who finally pays the price? Is it the person melting down in public, the person who throws the punch, the marriage that bends too far? The woman caught between competing claims, or the entire world around them when one final line gets crossed and nobody can pretend it was just another misunderstanding? That is why this story lingers, not because it is loud, but because it feels like it is building toward a point of no return. Will Spencer striking again, Steffy potentially reaching her breaking point, Finn gambling on a forgiveness fantasy, the Forresters fighting for image and control, and everyone else maneuvering around the wreckage, none of that sounds like temporary turbulence. It sounds like a system under pressure, a family empire trying to hold its shape while fractures spread through every room. And if the early spoilers are even half right, the real shock may not be that somebody loses control. The real shock may be discovering how many people saw this coming and still did nothing to stop it.